Hello everyone, you know how we roll. And honestly, these videos have been taking me too long, so we're going to get straight into this one. Hello and welcome to the second hero coming in the Phoenix Reborn Collection, which you can find on the Battle.net store for just £30.99. That is the price, and you will have seen the title of this video, but you may not guess who it's for, but here it is. So today we're going to be doing a makeover in the Phoenix Reborn Collection for Pharah. So in case you didn't know, the Phoenix Reborn Collection is the 3 heroes that I'm going to be reworking to make them what I would consider to be much more fun and enjoyable, whilst making them much more powerful. Now, I don't think Pharah is really in need of a buff, but I did it, and you can't stop me because it's already been done. This video has been released. You've already lost. It's already a victory to me. So now, without further ado, we need to get rid of the old man from Nebula's domain. And now we are ready to continue our journey with Phoenix. So Phoenix is going to be our remake of Pharah. Previously, if you watched the last video, Seraphim, you know that was a remake of Mercy. So we have remade Pharmacy so far. Except we're going to make it far more powerful than it's ever been before. If you watched that, Seraphim was a much more powerful and much more enjoyable version of Mercy, and that is what I'm focusing on, making Pharah more enjoyable. Now, for me, obviously, what I find enjoyable is very different, so I'm going to just explain my few issues with Pharah. The first one is that I do think that flying-wise, you can barely fly. Her fuel is 2 whole seconds. If I show you, 1, 2, there you go. It was 3, but I started on 1, so technically it should be like 0, 1, 2. And then you can do once and then an extra second, and that's it. Now I get it, you can, feather the throttle to fly a bit longer and all of that stuff. You can, do that and whatever you want to say. And so I wanted to keep the spirit of those moves because it is pretty fun to, get a lot of this hovering going, particularly when you can relocate with that. That's pretty awesome. So I've tried to keep that in the spirit of the kit. But what are my main complaints? The first one is that this projectile is probably... It's not that bad, but it's definitely not for me. The rocket is a bit too slow and a bit too easy to dodge at long distances. My second issue with her is I feel like she is very vulnerable in the sky unless you have a Mercy base or a support pocketing you around. So that's the second thing we're trying to not fix, because that is a bit of a weakness. But yeah, and then my final, so we're not trying to fix it, we're just trying to make it a bit better. And then my third thing is that Concussive Blast is a bit of a weird ability, so I am going to be changing it to probably just something I would consider more fun, not really something I have a massive problem with. And the final issue that I find with Pharah is that her ultimate ability tends to end very much most of the time like that. If you've ever heard of Pharah actually fully say her ult, it's probably because she's ulted one person on the other side of the map who's overextended. So without further ado, those are the things that I'm going to be fixing. Let's get straight into the stats of Phoenix. Phoenix is Pharah, but we're going to be calling her Phoenix because this is her reborn. So, Phoenix's stats, she has 125 health, and she has 0 armor with 100 shields. So you can see we have the same amount of health as Pharah does, but we get 100 of that as shields, which is juicy because shields regenerate much quicker than health does, which means that if you can remain not taking damage whilst in the sky, you might not need that healer quite so much. So, Phoenix's passive is going to be called Phoenix Protocol. Upon using any ability, your shields begin to regenerate immediately. So, essentially, if you use either one of her abilities, that is going to be her first ability or her second ability, not her right-click. Right-click is not an ability in this, it's a alternate fire, at least in regards to this. Your shields will begin to regenerate immediately, so if you take damage on her, you can immediately regain your shields by using an ability, which we will get to. You also have Phoenix Wings, which can make you hover for up to 4 seconds. So this is the same flight as Pharah, but you can do it for 4 seconds, not 2. That is a lot of extra flight time. That is twice as much from the fuel. And I understand lots of people don't like Pharah flying around in the sky, but I don't think she's that bad. I've honestly never felt that Pharah was a huge issue. Obviously you need someone to deal with it, but I just don't think that's immensely overpowered to be able to fly that much. But then again, I feel like the game's gone in the direction that stops people flying this much. So I will let you guys, or Blizzard and all that, decide. I don't actually expect these things to be made, but this is just what I would like it to be done. You automatically begin to refuel after landing or after using Phoenix Rise, and it will regenerate at 25% per second so long as you're on the ground or have Phoenix Rise active. I'll explain that later, but if you didn't know, Pharah's fuel recharges only when she's on the ground, and it's at about 30% per second. Something like 33%. I think it takes like 3 seconds for it to fully recharge. 1, 2, 3, yeah. About right. So this is going to take 4 seconds to recharge, but to compensate, of course, you have got a lot more fuel, which is definitely a trade I think most Pharahs would be willing to take. So yeah, Phoenix is also going to move 50% faster whilst in the air, which is a little bit quicker than Pharah can. The next thing we need to quickly go over is a debuff that Phoenix can apply, which is called Scorched. Scorched says that the splash damage of Firestarter deals an additional 5 damage. That's literally all it is. It's a debuff, you apply it to an enemy through the means I'm about to explain, and it essentially says that whilst they have Firestarter on them, the splash damage of your rocket or your Firestarter, so you can see the fire, not the direct hit damage, but the actual splash damage, that there, will always do 5 additional damage. So, that's what Scorched does. Phoenix's first ability, or primary fire should I say, is called Firestarter. Firestarter is an explosive light machine gun which does light damage in an area at a low rate of fire. So, this is a bit to unpack because it's very different to Pharah's rocket launcher, and I don't think there's really anything comparable to it in Overwatch at the moment. She fires a heavy machine gun shooting explosive projectiles at 110 meters per second, that's the projectile speed. And each one will do 15 damage per shot on impact, which can headshot, actually. I didn't even think about that. And it does an additional 20 damage in a 3-meter radius around the target. That cannot headshot. It's an explosive, of course it can't. This will fire at a rate of 2.5 shots per second. And it has 20 in a drum, requiring a 2.5 second reload. So, what's the deal here? It's kind of hard to find like anything that's actually comparable. It's a fairly slow rate of fire, 2.5 shots per second. And it does do explosive damage, so you are doing 20 damage in a 3-meter radius per explosion. Just to show you, the 3-meter radius is going to be quite small. Look, you can see 5 meters is there, so 3 meters is going to be probably like here. And that sort of little circle that I've just circled there with Orisa for some reason. I don't really have much of a comparison. This type of weapon doesn't really exist. I don't think there's any explosive ammunition apart from grenade launchers, which are just explosions in themselves. I don't think there's any, like, light machine guns. The closest I could do is it's kind of like this, but even this is too fast of a rate of fire. But yeah, this is going to be a way for Phoenix to apply some heavy pressure from the sky. She can fire a much faster rate of fire, twice this speed that you're seeing here. But to compensate, the damage is significantly lower per shot. If you get direct impacts, you are doing 35 damage per direct impact, whereas at the moment, Pharah can do 120 per direct impact. But you can shoot twice as many of these Firestarter rockets, but even with that being the case, if you say you can shoot twice as many, for every one of these rockets you shoot, you're doing 120 damage, but for every 2 Firestarters you shoot, it is doing only 70 damage, so still significantly or 50 less damage per second there. But don't worry, I have made this very strong, you don't need to fear. This is just a peppering machine. The idea is you can just pepper people with a consistent AoE damage. It's not really anything crazy, but it is a pretty heavy suppressing fire. The alternate fire is where this all comes together, and the alternate fire is called Landcarver. Fire a hugely powerful explosive bomb creating a burning area which slows foes and leaves them vulnerable to continued fire attacks. This is actually going to be much simpler than it sounds. The way it works is that you will fire a large rocket from the underside of your Firestarter, which travels at 40 meters per second, which is actually the same speed as these rockets here. So it's a heavy shot on the right click, which allows you to fire essentially a much larger bomb. And it's essentially the same rocket. I've said essentially too many times. Again, it's really grinding my gears. I'm sorry, I'm going to try harder. Upon colliding with a surface or an enemy hero, it will detonate in a 5 meter radius. So 5 meter radius is definitely kind of big. You got to think that that's a circle from here, which will hit this guy and also hit that spot there. And it will do 50 damage on the direct hit. So if I hit someone directly with it, they take 50. And an additional 100 damage in the radius as a splash damage. All of these can have damage fall-offs. I'm sorry that I didn't bother to calculate damage fall-offs. Upon colliding, it will leave an inferno, which will slow enemy heroes in the area by 15% and deal 20 damage per second to any enemies within this area. So it leaves a fire on the floor, similar to Torbjorn's ult, but much less damage, but a bit of a slow attached to it as well. The area will only last for 3 seconds, but whenever it damages a foe, they will become scorched for 3 seconds, which will increase the damage of your Firestarter's splash damage from 20 to 25, which now means that instead of doing 35 damage per shot on direct hit, you're now doing 40 damage per shot on direct hit. Which is, you know, it's going to add up. That's an extra 15 damage per second. No, it isn't. It's an extra 12.5 damage per second. There we go. Sorry, quick maths. On top of that, of course, those enemies are also being slowed, so it's a bit of crowd control. This ability has a 6-second cooldown, so it's designed to be, you're doing your, you know, fire with your light machine gun, and then you do a right click to do a big explosion, which will make them more vulnerable, as well as creating an area of denial. It doesn't do huge damage. 20 damage per second is very, very limiting, but it's still doing some damage, and it's leaving you much more vulnerable to follow-up fire. It is an increase of DPS by 12.5% on Phoenix's rockets, and that's single target. It's definitely even more if we're talking about, you know, group-based damage. So what is Phoenix's first ability? Well, in a similar way to Seraphim, the first ability is called Phoenix Rise. This is actually very similar to what we already have. So let's go for a quick explanation. You will soar upwards into the sky 9 meters at 24 meters per second. These are slightly larger numbers than what Pharah's currently do, because personally I think Pharah should be able to ascend a little bit quicker than she does. Whilst in the air, you move 30% faster for the next 3 seconds. For this duration, you consume no fuel while flying. So the idea is that you will soar up into the sky, and then for the next 3 seconds you can just hover without any cost to your fuel at all, and you move 30% faster whilst hovering in the air. Any hostile within 3 meters of you will be knocked back strongly and scorched for 3 seconds. This is quite similar to Pharah's current rocket boost ability, but it just works in a slightly different way, which means that 1, you end up with quite a bit more movement in the air after using rocket boost, or sorry, Phoenix Rise, and 2, Phoenix will also get to hover in the air for 3 seconds without consuming fuel, which is much more than the 1 second of additional fuel that this ability normally gives. So yeah, definitely much better. Still on a 14-second cooldown, but that's not as bad because, of course, just how much additional flight time that you actually get from this. So yeah, I know a lot of people are going to be upset with me allowing Phoenix to fly this long, but okay. I'm going to stick with these numbers and live in the knowledge that this is probably not going to be a change that they make. But to be honest, let's be real, none of the things I'm doing anyone's really paying any attention to. I hope so one day, but I must admit, this one's going to be a bit more for fun. I can see why Phoenix is a problem for everyone playing Reinhardt or most of the tanks. Anyway, let's just keep going. The next ability, or ability 2, for Phoenix is called Implosive Blast. Fires a powerful blast which rapidly pulls hostiles together. You kind of understand what this does just at the base. It's Concussive Blast. It works in a 10-meter radius. It works in an 8-meter radius. And any hostile which is in that 8-meter radius is pulled 4 meters towards the center. So I do want that nice and clear. This is not Orissa's pull. Orissa's pull is much more precise, and it yoinks them all to an exact spot. As an example, I would like to really get this clear. If I was to do a, let's say here, I shoot it here, right? That will hit that tank bot, as you can see, and it would pull him, but he wouldn't get pulled to here. He would get pulled to here. And if someone was over here, they would get pulled to here. So it has grouped them up a bit, but it hasn't just dunked them all on the exact same spot, which is what Orissa's Halt did. So I think that distinction means it's much less usable, i.e. much less easy to just get, you know, assassinations on the entire enemy team. So I think that's fine. Also, when Phoenix uses this ability, she is recoiled 10 meters backwards and 5 meters upwards. This is to compensate for the fact that, of course, Phoenix isn't going to be getting the concussive effect that she would get from Concussive Blast on Pharah. So Implosive Blast, she just zooms backwards when she uses it, essentially. Any enemy that is hit by this blast will be slowed by 30% and scorched for 2 seconds. And of course, don't forget, starts to regenerate your shields immediately. Just to also say, I am much. If I had to like bet my life on one of these designs to get done, This one and the next one are sort of more for laughs, if I'm being honest. I don't know if laughs is the right word, but just me having a good time coming up with ideas, silly ideas to be honest. But the Seraphim idea, or Mercy's skill-based Mercy, I really want that. I would love that character so much, and I don't think it's that unbalanced. I think it's actually a better version of Mercy. I'm just going to say it. So anyway, moving on from that distraction, let's talk... that 9-second cooldown on Implosive Blast. And now, finally, the ultimate ability of Phoenix, and I think you can all agree I had to name it this, is called Phoenix Reborn. Named after the Phoenix Reborn Collection, or more, the collection was named after this. You charge in Burning Fury, detonating in a cataclysmic explosion before being reborn. So, I've just said some real LARP words there, so what does that all add up to? Well, here's some more. Burn like the stars and race forwards in a straight line to your target at 100 meters per second, exploding in an 8-meter radius, dealing 300 damage to any target struck, and dying. I didn't want to say the other way of saying that because I don't know if that's bad. Like, it's a video game, you know, people die all the time, but like, I don't feel like you're allowed to say that you know, did. Yeah, I don't want to say it. I don't know if YouTube cares. I personally don't feel like just saying it is bad. This is not content for children, but whatever. I don't know where this rant's gone, but I guess that's why, you know, you expect these in my ramblings. So you charge forward. So essentially, you could whilst I said essentially, didn't I? When you're looking at a location, you choose that location and then you shoot yourself as a projectile towards it at 100 meters per second, which is pretty dang fast. When you collide with the terrain or an enemy hero, you will explode in an 8-meter radius area, doing 300 damage to any target struck and dying. Now, before anyone gets all up in my grill about how, oh, they'll never do that, the Overwatch team doesn't like one-shot abilities, I will briefly remind you. Okay, Bastion's cheating. Hang on, I have to prove my point. And also, I mean, I could go get, you know, Cassidy's ult one-shots. I guess Hanzo's doesn't, but Junkrat's does. Pharah's basically does. So Phoenix is just following in the footsteps of the others. So, after you die, for the next 4 seconds, you will pulse with radiant energy. So you'll be like a little ember that is sort of pulsing with a heartbeat. And after 4 seconds, you'll detonate again in an 8-meter radius, doing 150 damage in the area around you, and return into life. This can be used while dead, so if you die, you can actually use this ultimate, whilst dead, to immediately resurrect yourself, and do 75 damage in an 8-meter radius of yourself. So... I kind of made this ult because I as a bit of a I think first off it's really cool. It's really cool to like sort of explode in fire and create this cataclysmic explosion. But I did sort of do it because it was kind of funny how in every ultimate Pharah always ends up dying. So I figured, what if Phoenix followed in her suit and she dies every time she ults? I just figured that was so fitting. I don't think the ult is too bad either. I think it's actually pretty strong. It's a really big area clearer. If they all stack up, you can actually just wipe an area. To be clear, if there's a barrier in the way, like for example Reinhardt's shield. That will block the entirety of the damage, as you would expect with all explosions. Same with Sigma's barrier, and also same with things such as May's wall, Symmetra's wall, or even May's cryo freeze, because that does block, what's it called? You know what it's called, Diva Bomb. So it should block this as well. So there is a lot of different things that can block it. A Suzu Charm will absolutely save you. And there is a minor build-up, so it's designed to be sort of similar. The way that I envision it, at least in types of how it builds up, is it's similar to this. When Ilavi first pops her ult, you can't just toss it immediately. And the way it will work is whilst Phoenix is then ready to use the ability, as soon as she presses the ability, there is about half a second to maybe a second where she can't just immediately dive or charge. And so you do have a bit of time to react, but obviously if you get trapped in a room with her, you're just going to get blown up immediately. In the same way that if a Tracer just sticks you, you're just kind of dead. If a Hog solo ults you, if a Ryan solo ults you, if a Winston solo ults you, if a Sojin solo ults you, if any of these characters solo ult you, there's a good chance you're not going to survive. And that's not going to be any different with Phoenix. The ult charge is 2,450, which is a bit more than Pharah's, because I presume that one, she's going to probably be doing a bit more poke damage, and two, she's also, I think, oh, I forgot I'm not playing Pharah. You're also going, it's a bit of a stronger ultimate, in my opinion. So yeah, especially since you can literally revive yourself mid-fight with it. So yeah, that is Phoenix. The way I see her playing is exactly the same as Pharah. She's the same character, but she can fly much more, do much more pepper in fire, so you can do like a much more rapid fire poking at people to just get damage down. You can help group people together with your Implosive Blast. You can fly a significant more and move fairly quickly in the sky, but you don't have that extra dodge that Pharah has. I took that away because I figured if you're going to fly that much in the sky, you definitely don't deserve to have that much mobility when you're up there. So, or sorry, agileness, agility, there we go. So that is going to be Phoenix. Do I think Phoenix is better than Pharah? I think in a world where flyers can be balanced, then Phoenix is definitely going to be up there as a really cool flyer. She has a really neat ult, and I think there's a good chance that that ult could actually be used somewhere else. But do I think this is a character they'd really entertain? I think she's a bit similar to Pharah, and ultimately Pharah is probably going to be the one that they would prefer, simply because they've gone away from the ability to fly for a significant amount of time and instead moved towards a much more agile an agile character who is capable of moving around much quicker in the air, but can't be in the air for ridiculous amounts of time. So yeah, I don't think she's going to be done, but you know what? I had an absolute fun time making this. I think the ult was really fun. I don't like to toot my... Actually, you know what? I do like to toot my own horn. I'm just well aware of the social ramifications. But yeah, so that is going to be everything in this video. This is the second hero of the Phoenix Reborn Collection, and it is the Phoenix Reborn herself. So we'll kill the old man a few more times. Yeah, just because the time is ticking away. We do have one more from the Phoenix Reborn Collection, which is me remaking classic Overwatch characters. So Mercy, Pharah, and now the third one, we'll have to see who it is. It should be a tank, but I've gone a bit rogue on this one because I already did my fixing tanks video. So if I was in the fixing tanks video, I already did a rework for Malga, a rework for Orisa, and a vague rework for Hog. I think they would call that a rework for Hog. So I had to go a little bit rogue on this one about who I was actually going to try to remake in the Reborn Phoenix Reborn. series. I do have the next series after this ready, so there is actually 3 more heroes after this one, and then I'm probably going to dial back on the Overwatch hero creation. But either way, that is going to be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed watching, and before I can finish, I must do one more thing, and that is say goodbye to you guys, goodbye to the old man, and goodbye to me. Goodbye, everyone.